on your screen. This evening, Books and Books, in collaboration with the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce and the Business Improvement Division of Coral Gables, is very happy to welcome Mr. Richard R. Shapiro, presenting his new book, The Endangered Customer, 8 Steps to Guarantee Repeat Business. And here to introduce Mr. Shapiro, we have a great friend of Books and Books. He is the president of the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce. Please welcome to the podium Mr. Mark Trowbridge.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I want to remind you, for those that are here in the audience, we have some lovely wine and dessert here for you to enjoy. So don't be shy about getting up and helping yourself. And we'll obviously have that after the program. And I think Richard's going to stick around and sign a few of his books. As you heard mentioned, this is a wonderful collaborative opportunity that not only our Chamber of Commerce has regularly with Books and Books, but the opportunity to work with our sister organization at the Business Improvement District of downtown Coral Gables. So I do want to recognize my good colleague and friend, Marina Foglia, who is their executive director. And thank you. We are all about partnerships and collaboration here in Coral Gables. And what I think is so fantastic about this space here at Books and Books is it's not only a great independent bookstore, and on many lists it's the best locally owned independent bookstore in the world. It is also a great gathering place, a great community space where folks come together and share and hear from experts like you'll hear from Richard. It's my pleasure to welcome to Books and Books Richard R. Shapiro. He founded the Center for Client Retention in 1988 to provide customized research, training, and consulting for Fortune 500 companies. Excuse me. Before he did that, he was an executive with ADP for 14 years and traveled the world consulting with companies about how to engage better with their clients. And his customer relationship work has led him to be a top-ranked blogger. He has also been interviewed by the New York Times, Associated Press, Wall Street Journal, all of the most respected and revered publications that we turn to when we're looking for an authority on any topic. And he is that authority. Today, he is going to share with us about the endangered customer. How many of you have customers that you are working every single day to please, to keep, to make happy? How many of you have those? Well, we do too. Marina and I run business member organizations, and so we're constantly in that business. So when Books and Books told us that Richard was coming, we said, how can we jump on and collaborate? He reached out to us as well. It has been wonderful to plan and prepare for tonight. So without further ado, and to those of you here in the audience and those of you at home, please welcome to the Books and Books stage, Mr. Richard R. Shapiro.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Melina. By the way, this is the best-looking audience that I've ever had. So, you know, I don't think the people on the live stream actually can see you, or can they see you? How can they? Okay, so I just want to let you know before I start, this is the best-looking audience. And at the end, I'll know if you're the smartest audience. So anyway, I was very fortunate to learn about customer service, customer experience, generating repeat business at a very young age. In my early teens, my dad owned a small men's retail clothing store, and during the busiest holidays of the year, which were Christmas and Father's Day, I worked at my dad's store behind the cash register. And it was a really fun job, and in those days, I don't want to date myself, but it was mostly cash as opposed to credit cards. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, I had to return all that cash. So it was a really fun job, collecting money all day, but more than a fun job, it really was an education, because I could see my dad interacting with people as they entered his store. And the key word here is people. My father saw all customers as people first, customers second. And if my dad knew the person that walked through the door, his first question would never, ever be, how can I help you today? His first question would be, how was your weekend? How was your daughter's wedding? Did your son get into the college of his choice? Did you get any compliments on the suit, that I sold you 3 weeks ago? My dad was much more interested in the customer's state of mind than in their method of payment. And if my dad didn't know the person that walked through the door, he certainly would get to know them. He'd find out their name, he'd find out what brought them into the store, which is important in any business. And he'd also try to learn something unique about them that he could recall on the next visit. He had a terrific knack for that. He also understood that new customers, and not too many people or not too many businesses really understand this, really need additional welcoming, and they also need additional information. So he would tell them or find out if they had problems parking. He would find out or tell them what their hours were. He would also tell them when he got new stock in, so it would give them a reason for inviting the customer back to return. And overall, whether it's a new customer or whether it was an existing customer, he welcomed everybody into the store just like he'd welcome them into our home. So to the customer, whether it's your e-commerce site, the person who answers the phone at your business, or a physical store, it is actually, the home of the company. So this particular session is about my new book, The Endangered Customer, which is there. And it's really my second book. So my first book was really good, but this book is even better. And why is it better? Or why did I have to write a second book? It's hard enough to write a first book. The reason is that my first book really didn't go far enough, and I got very frustrated because these days everybody talks about customer experience. Nobody really knows what the customer experience is. They think it's a single interaction that happens at a store when you call a company or when you go on their internet. But the customer experience, really my definition, which is not just mine, is really that the customer experience starts when a customer actually buys something online or buys something from a physical store, but should never, never end. So every time somebody goes into a store, goes into a restaurant, or calls a restaurant hostess station, the customer experience really is paused at that junction, and it really needs to be rebooted and restarted. And that's why I came up with a new book called The Endangered Customer, 8 Steps to Guarantee Repeat Business, because I wanted customers to understand how to actually reboot that experience. So why did I call it The Endangered Customer? I called it The Endangered Customer because in the history of mankind, we have never had more competition than we've had today. First of all you have to do is walk down Miracle Mile, and you see 5 million restaurants, apparel stores, jewelry stores, antique stores. So just within town, you have a lot of competition. Then you have third-party sellers like Amazon and Google and eBay, and they're starting to move into luxury goods as well. So it's not just standard products or cleaning products. Then you have startups like Uber that didn't even exist prior to 2009, and now are worth $50 to $60 billion. And who knows what the startup's going to be that might drastically affect your industry. Then the next level is really that we're in a connected society where literally companies are tracking exactly where you are at every point in time, which means that physically you could be walking into a restaurant, you might have even made a reservation, and all of a sudden you'll get a text on your phone or something through your app saying, you know what, if you come to our restaurant tonight, you'll get a free drink or you'll get a discount. And this is happening every single day. Every phone, every Fitbit, every Apple Watch, every iPhone, people are tracking, and all this information is sold. The last thing that makes it competitive, which hasn't really affected us so much now, is that with the millennials coming up, first of all, the good news is that millennials really will pay extra for good customer service, so that's important. The other thing that's good news, but it's going to affect the economy, is that they're into sustainability, which means that they really like to recycle products, and really their whole mindset is really going to be maybe instead of buying, renting, or instead of buying something new, like an apparel, like Rent the Runway or Le Tote, they're starting to sell garments, bags, shoes, dresses, menswear, just that you can rent it instead of buying it. Maybe you're going to your high school reunion, 40-year high school reunion, and you want to buy something very special, you want to really look good. Well, maybe it's the only night that you want to look or wear that outfit. You can go on Le Tote and actually buy stuff. So there's so much competition, and that's just the competition that I know of today. So unless you have a proactive strategy to actually generate repeat customers, you're leaving your business very, very vulnerable. So I also like to say about the customer experience, as an analogy, do you want it to be a date or do you want it to be a romance? A date is just a series of interactions that happen that are never tied in together. But a romance really is romancing and putting all these interactions together and actually building and creating a relationship. So the book is entitled The Endangered Customer, and I'm very excited about it. I know Mark is going to laugh again, but number one, I wrote it. Number two, the concepts are timely. You know, if I wrote this book 5 years ago, people would say, you know, we don't have that much competition. And if I wrote it 5 years from now, there'd be a lot of books on this subject. The other thing I'm excited about is that we're also a research company, and it's based on 28 years of research. So I don't like to just say that this is what you should do without having the facts and the research. The next thing is that I developed 8 steps and not just 8 ingredients. My wife, Susie, who's in the audience, knows that, you know, I don't cook at all. But I would have a shot at cooking if I actually had the ingredients, let's say to make a turkey or to bake brownies, if I had the steps along with the ingredients. The next thing is that each step is tied into a human emotion or a psychological component, making those steps really very powerful. Matter of fact, they're so powerful that really you can use them not only in business, but with your coworkers, with your neighbors, with your significant others, with your friends. It really doesn't matter because they're all tied into human emotions. So the 8 steps are: make me feel welcome, give me your full attention, answer more than my question, know your stuff, don't tell me no, invite me to return, show me I matter, and surprise me in good ways. So what I thought I would do is specifically go over the last 3 steps first. But before I get to that, I'd like to throw out a question to the audience. What would you say is the strongest human emotion that exists, of all the human emotions? Love, good answer, but not the right answer. Fear, good answer, but not the right answer.
Anger.
No, good answer. No.
Regret. Greed.
No.
Hunger.
No.
Somebody something.
Hate.
No, but a good answer. Oh, these are all good answers, but and I will prove it to you when I say it.
Equanimity.
Excuse me?
Equanimity?
No.
No.
Thank you. The strongest human emotion is hope. The strongest human emotion is hope. And when someone gets married, they're excited, but they hope that they're marrying the right person. When, God forbid, someone has cancer, they're frightened and they're worried, but they hope that the next doctor they go to, the next pharmaceutical company is going to come up with a cure. It's the same thing for a business environment. No one goes into a restaurant or walks into a store unless they're hoping that something can happen. And to just think that it's just someone is beamed into a restaurant or beamed out or beamed into a store and out just is not the way that you can generate repeat business. Like I was talking to a gentleman who owns actually a lot of malls, and he was talking about a luggage store. And I said, well, do you realize every time someone goes into a luggage store to buy something, they're not buying a piece of luggage, they're really going on a trip. And that's really a good opportunity to find out where they're going, engage the customer, and then maybe after that trip is over, send them a nice email saying, I hope you had a really good time. Those are the things that really show the customers that they matter. So once again, the 8 steps are: make me feel welcome, give me your full attention, answer one way question, know your stuff, don't tell me no, invite me to return, show me I matter, and surprise me in good ways. The last 3 steps, which are invite me to return, show me I matter, and surprise me in good ways, nobody does this. I mean, I'm talking about 99% of the people don't do that, so I figured I would just focus on that, although in the book, of course, everything is laid out in detail. So I'm sure all of you, I won't ask you the question, but I'm sure all of you have been on a first date at some point in time. But I'm not going to ask you who has gone on. Okay. All right. So you've been on a first date, and what happens when you go on a first date and you really, really, really like the person who's on that first date? What are you hoping happens before that first date is over? Yes, but before that date is over, the person says, you know what? Let's do it again, and let's do it next Tuesday. If they don't say that before the end of the date and they walk out, you're on the phone with your parents, your siblings, your friends, saying, I really like Joe, but I don't think he likes me. I don't think he's ever going to call me again. It's the same thing, really, for a customer experience. If, in fact, now most customer experiences aren't that good, but if, in fact, you have a real good customer experience, it's human nature for that person saying, I want to see you again. Matter of fact, I happens to be one of the shortest words in the English language that has the most impact. I want to see you again. Not please come back, but I want to see you again is so, so powerful. The next one, which is rarely done, is show customers they matter after the sale, and sending them email blasts and promotions, daily promotions, weekly promotions, newsletters. That does not show customers they matter. That's treating them like junk. But the beauty of email, or even written, of course, handwritten notes, is especially if you have a new customer that comes into your business and you learn something about them, and then at the appropriate time you send a really nice email. Mrs. Jones, it was so nice. We appreciate that you came into the store for the first time or the restaurant for the first time. We really value your business. That's the way, whatever it's going to be, that you keep in touch with customers and really show them that they matter. And the surprise in good ways is mostly for, most businesses have the Pareto principle, which is 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. And those 20% you really need to do something special for, because they probably know their largest customer, they probably know that they are a large customer, and it's important to recognize them. One of the stores, very successful stores and a successful author, is Jack Mitchell, and he owns Jack Mitchell stores in Connecticut. And he wrote Hug Your Customers and Hug Your People. And his retail business, which is quite large, he definitely, women's and men's apparel, he absolutely does have the 80-20 rule. And he actually calls the 20% of his customers who bring in 80% of his business clients. And they have a very detailed CRM system where they keep track, and the customers know this, they don't actually show the screen, of their kids, if they get divorced, if they get remarried, their significant others. They keep all this information. The customers know that they have it, and they really do appreciate that Jack Mitchell's associates have all this information. My wife and I, we walked into Jack Mitchell stores because he had invited us up there on a Saturday at noon. And as soon as we walked in there was something that I never saw before, and that was 50 salespeople, very professional salespeople at one time, with way over 100 or 200 customers in a small little department store at one time that you could just visually see. That just doesn't happen today in businesses. So, my wife and I, we live in Manhattan, and then we also now have a place in Fort Lauderdale, so we're very lucky to be in Florida a good portion of the time, and that seems to be increasing. We also spend a month in the Berkshire Mountains near Lenox, and last July, maybe because I was about to write the book, or not write the book, but finish it, I paid extra special attention. And when we were in the Berkshires, and I think this is very appropriate to a town like Coral Gables, we probably went into way over 100 establishments, restaurants, bagel stores, coffee stores, apparel stores, art galleries. Nobody, I'm saying nobody within those 30 days ever engaged us to find out how long we were in the Berkshires. Were we there just for a day, an hour? Did we live there permanently? If a restaurant early on had engaged us, and it was a pretty good meal, and said, I really want to see you again, I know you're going to be here another month, there's a very good shot that we would have been here, been there back many times. Just before, I'm not going to tell you where we went, we did stop into one very nice accessory store because we got here early, and it's beautiful stuff. But did the person ever engage us in a conversation? Did he even ever tell us his name? No. And it was beautiful stuff, very high stuff, and it's a new store. I know he wants to be very, very successful. He doesn't know whether we just came for the day, once again, or that we live in Coral Gables. He knows nothing about us. And you can ask these questions really without being intrusive. Matter of fact, a lot of times when we train companies, especially in retail, we'll say it has to be totally legitimate, but compliment the customer on something. You have a beautiful necklace, hair, glasses, earrings. Sometimes, if it has to be genuine, but immediately someone can say, you know what, my mother gave me those earrings, or then you can right away find out all about them just by having that kind of interaction. So the last story I want to tell is, as I said, my wife and I live in Manhattan. And in Manhattan, if you look on TripAdvisor, there's 11,521 restaurants. And we live in Union Square, so there's a lot of restaurants there, probably like 500 within our walking distance. We like to walk. And a about 4 years ago, we went into one restaurant called City Crab, and the food was very good. The prices were reasonable. And our waiter, who gave us outstanding service, his name was Iran. And at the end of the meal, Iran said, basically, I want to be your waiter for life. He said, here is my cell number. Every time you want a reservation, I want you to text me, and not only will I make the reservation, you will sit in my section. And Susie and I have been there at least 100 to 200 times, because every time we have people coming from out of town, we have anniversary parties, birthday parties, and the reason is that we know that when we walk into City Crab, we're not walking into City Crab, we're walking in to seeing Iran, and he gives us a hug and kisses. He's like almost another son. And Iran is not like that just to us either. His average tip is 30%. So you just don't tip or receive an average of 30% unless you're really engaging and building up relationships with your customer. So at this point, I think I'd like to take some questions. Can we have some questions? Or does anybody, what questions do you have? I know there must be some questions, yes.
So when you have people that don't get what you're saying, because I totally get it, but you have clients, whatever it is, that sit there and say, well, I just want to figure out what somebody can do for me, and they're not like into what you're saying is building a relationship. How do you explain to them the value of the relationship?
Well, I didn't understand this question. In other words, you're talking about an associate doesn't want to engage the customer that someone works for?
No, when you go into when you're dealing with customers,
Right.
whatever it is, how do you impress upon people how valuable what you're saying is? Because some people really don't get it. I mean,
I know, how do I impress with the retailer or the person who owns the business?
yeah, whatever your client is,
Yeah.
whoever your client is.
Well, first of all, it's a standard kind of fact that it costs 8 times as much or 10 times as much to bring in new customers as it does to keep the ones you have. So I try to explain that even if you had the same revenue and but you had the same customers coming back, you'd be a lot more, profitable. But, especially now with social media and reviews, I mean, people are not going to give you a really good review unless you have outstanding service. And if you just have mediocre service and then you have some bad circumstances, you're going to get a lot of negative reviews. So I think the biggest, the biggest thing that would convince them is social media can be very scary, and you better make sure that you have 10 to 1, positive review. Not everybody's going to be happy, but if I go to a restaurant site and I see 40% positive and 60% negative, I'll never go to that restaurant, especially if I'm going out of town. So I think really stressing, but some people just don't get it. So it doesn't matter whether they're the owner or it's an associate. And I do get frustrated sometimes when I come across outstanding associates, and I can tell they're not being very treated by their by their employer. Matter of fact, one time I went to speak to a manager in a food store, and he was very dismissive and said, "I know she's good," and I knew just the way he was dealing with her that he treated her like garbage. So that's not a very good environment.
I find that if I go to a restaurant, for example, and I find out that the service is outstanding and they're working very hard and your heart goes out to them because people are just patting him on the back and walking away, I'll go up to the manager and I'll say, I have something to tell you. And he freaks out every single time. He goes, oh. I go, no, here's the positive. I appreciate you hiring this gentleman or this lady because it made us enjoy our meal better. Oh my God, nobody ever comes and does that.
Well, that's a good point. It's true that unfortunate that a lot of times when you say you want to speak to someone, they get scared, that it's going to be bad news, which is really a role for all of us, that when we really have a good experience, we should try to break that paradigm and really compliment people who do engage and tell the customer or tell the owner you really do appreciate.
When you pass on the good news, because they're so used to the bad news.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what other questions do we have? Yes.
How about the cultural component? Some cultures, Asian or others, may not be so comfortable in being so outgoing.
You know,
So
that
how would you, But where would you put that?
Well, I think you do have to respect that, and I work with a lot of luxury brands too that have a lot of luxury customers. One of the things that I don't understand is in almost any business, even if it's a gas station, you know the person's name, because at the end they check out with a credit card. So at the end, the transaction say, Mr. Shapiro, it really was a pleasure to help you today. I'd love to see you back. I mean, people love to hear their name no matter what language or culture they're in. And I think that is so important. I mean, and I don't understand. I think that if you're going to do anything in a retail business, when you say goodbye to that person, you know their name. Mr. Shapiro, thank you so much. I really appreciate your business. Yes, it was.
Well, I was just going to say, maybe in addition to that, I mean, I agree, being respectful in any language and any culture is going to go a long way. But I think that beyond that, in terms of the interactions and stuff, I think of restaurants. I was a co-owner of a restaurant for 7 years, and it's having staff that you train properly and that can read their tables. And it's the same thing in a store. It could be a retail store environment. You read the customer.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
good staff will be able to read the customer and what kind of interaction they want, because it doesn't work with one approach with the next person isn't going to be exactly the right thing. So a really truly good customer service person will be able to read that person and understand what is going to work best for them.
No, Kelly, that's an excellent point. One of the things, my second step is give me your full attention. And that really is about active listening, not only to what people are saying, but also how they're feeling. And once again, you have to be careful about the cultural aspects. But people, when they walk into a store, they could be delighted, happy, frustrated, annoyed, and just saying, I see you're annoyed. Especially, I hate to pick on restaurants, but I love when you call for a reservation and they say we're booked. Well, are they booked forever? Are they booked for the lifetime? That's just closing the loop on that restaurant. If they said instead of we're booked, I'm sorry, we're booked tonight. We'd love to have you come back. Usually it's a 3-day, we need 3 days notice. Do you want to call me personally and I'll make sure? Do you have another date in mind? But when they just say no, we have no reservations, or frankly, when they call to confirm the reservation, it's really for their advantage, not for the customers. If they said, we just want to remind you that you have a reservation in 2 days. Have you ever been here before? Do you know where the parking is? We have valet parking. I mean, try to build a relationship before they ever even come. These are all things. I tell anybody who has a retail physical store that they should throw out the automated voice response system or voice recorder during business hours. If it's a physical business, they should always, and they have people working there, they should have somebody answering that phone. Somebody asked me to do a mystery shop call just at a very high-end jewelry store in New York. They said the average prices are $50,000, and I called the day before and I said, I'm coming from Florida. I'm going to be in New York tomorrow. What are your hours? And they said 10 to 5, and that was it. Well, they get an F for that call because they could have built up a relationship and found, oh, that's so nice. What time are you coming in? Joe will be here. So there's so many things you can even do on a phone before you ever get to the place of business. Yes, sir.
Someone asked about cultural differences. The people in Turkey probably read your book because we were in Istanbul. You walk into a shop, you say, I'd like to look at it. They say, where are you from? Oh, you're from there. Oh, do you enjoy it? Here. They send out for some apple tea. You drink some apple tea. They want to talk. How are you enjoying your vacation? You like the city? And then later, look at the merchandise. They want you to feel really welcome.
That's a good point. No, so Turkey is the place to go if you want to learn how to replicate customer service. And you can walk away with a rug. The very young lady said here over here.
There you go.
But it's for my first book, and it really is incorporated in my second book, I talked about how welcomers, which I felt my father was, someone who sees the customer as a person first, they segmented the interaction into 3 components, what I call the greet, the assist, and the leave behind. And the purpose of the greet was really to connect with them on a personal level before you ever got to what they wanted to buy. And the assist was really to help them as much as possible and also segment that between first and repeat customers. And the leave behind was to say, I want to see you again. That was the leave behind. What other questions do we have tonight for this very smart and good-looking group? Yes, Dolores.
So you have a customer who's really difficult to work with, but they're a big portion of your business and you really want to please them. So what kind of techniques or things can you say with the customer that is going to, no matter what you do, not think that you're, going to provide them the service that you need?
Is this a business customer or a consumer?
It's a business customer.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I recommend with business customers, first of all, I'm a big proponent, if possible, in meeting people outside their offices, like for breakfast, lunch, or coffee, because then that makes it totally different and you can really get to personal things. The other thing which I suggest for business customers is kind of asking them or telling them you want to set up like a business audit where you go through a series of questions like, why did you select us in the first place? Start with a positive. What do you like best? What? And through that process, it might remind them how good you really are. Matter of fact, we just did that process for a client of ours, and they said, you know what, it was great because actually some of our customers confused us with a competitor, and we remind them, no, it wasn't the competitor. We do that, not the competitor. And so it's just having a conversation and building that relationship. Yes, sir.
Surveys, is it just opening up the door to complaints, or is it just something you should do as more of a conversation directly versus just sending out a survey?
Sure. That's a very good question. What about surveys? Well, the majority of our company revenue comes from doing surveys. So the surveys are good as long as they're not after every interaction. That doesn't make sense at all. In other words, every time you go to have your car repaired, I just don't think it makes sense to have a survey. I think once a year, maybe do an overall survey. So I think it has to be, you have to time it and you have to ask the right questions and you have to always include some open-ended questions. But surveys have become like a dirty word. Feedback is a good word, but surveys are a bad word. But you should time them. And sometimes you can do surveys too in person or over the telephone, beside the internet. But the internet does afford the convenience to the person who's filling it out to fill it out, at any time. So surveys are excellent, feedback is excellent, but don't overdo it. Did that answer your question? Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
You have an important customer and you find out he's chosen another vendor. He's chosen to use another vendor. How would you approach that? Would you call him and ask him, did I offend you? What would you do in that case?
Well, interestingly enough, I spoke at we belong to the Tower Club in Fort Lauderdale, and I spoke at one of their luncheons, and somebody bought my book, and my book does include actually a bookmark with all the 8 elements on it. And they had a customer, they just sent me an email 2 days ago, they had a customer that said they were going to cancel, okay? They pulled out the bookmark, they went to the phone, and they used the 8 steps during a phone interview, and they got the customer back, and they were calling me to thank me. Once the customer leaves, it's hard to get them back, which really means you don't wait to that point. But if the customer is leaving the door open a little bit, you can really use the 8 points and try to get feedback from them. We also do some win-loss surveys, and they're very difficult to do with the people that actually left the company. One of the things that's important, because I started at ADP, we came up with a new account coordinator because we found out that our first year attrition rate was twice as high as overall attrition rate, because in those days, people were going on a new payroll system, and if the bookkeeper, it was always Betty the bookkeeper, if the bookkeeper said, oh, I don't like this, or she didn't understand it, it was still easy enough for her to go back to the old system. So we created a new account coordinator position to give that extra hand-holding so that the customer really wasn't turned into the regular customer service department until they fully understood everything about the payroll system. What other questions do we have? One other point I want to say is a lot of times in a lot of businesses, especially in the phone business, somebody will thank you for the help and say, I really appreciate you helped me today. And what do people say? No problem. That is not good. What you should be saying is, it's my pleasure. So it was my pleasure to be at Books and Books today, and I really appreciate everybody's participation. Thank you very much.
can tell you do research because you said, what are the other questions, and not, are there any other questions?
Well, that's one of the things I also teach yet, but even I have to focus on that.
Are there any other questions is a yes or no answer. It's closed. What other questions are there is an open-ended question. If there are no more questions, folks, note to our internet audience watching at home, there's still plenty of time for you to call the number on your screen, and we can ship a copy of The Endangered Customer to wherever you are in the U.S. free of charge. For those of you here in the house, we'll have the book for sale at the counter in the front room over there, and Richard will be signing here at the table to the left of the podium, and there is the wine and dessert reception over there. I want to thank our partners this evening, Marina Foglia from the Business Improvement District of Coral Gables, and the president of the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Mark Trowbridge. And please give another hand to Richard R. Shapiro. Thanks very much. Thank you, Richard.